The first Trump administration was probably one of the most corrupt administration this country has ever seen, but the incoming second Trump administration just said, hold my beer, bitch, because I'm rolling through. And that is exactly what we are going to see. And I think what is most disgusting about all of this is this corruption is now out in the open. We basically saw Elon Musk buy his way into the White House. We have seen his net worth skyrocket by billions since Donald Trump won the 2024 campaign. We have people trying to invest in cryptocurrencies that are in some way tied to the Trump family. And then we have Donald Trump himself appointing people that he pardoned in his first term to new ambassadorships. All of the corruption is the point. Donald Trump is going to use this second Trump administration to go after his political enemies and use the office of the president to benefit himself while screwing over everybody else. So if you are a MAGA supporter and you somehow thought that Donald Trump was going to be looking out for you, you've got another thing coming. And it is really kind of irritating to me that we now see these billionaire tech bros trying to peddle their influence on places like Joe Rogan because they know they have a friend in Elon Musk or Vivek Ramaswamy running that new made-up agency called Doge. Now, don't get me wrong. If you want to go out there and make money, you want to make billions, I am all down for that. But when you are trying to screw over other people, when you are trying to take advantage of the American people, when you are trying to rig the system in your favor, that is what I have a problem with. And that is exactly what Marc Andreessen is advocating for here. Basically saying that the CFPB needs to be done away with because they are just a rogue agency going after Americans. Let's go ahead and take a look at what he had to say, and then we'll go from there.
And then my favorite twist is we have this thing called independent federal agencies. So like, for example, we have this thing called the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB, which was it's sort of Elizabeth Warren's personal agency that she gets to control. And it's an independent agency that just gets to run and do whatever it wants, right? And if you read the Constitution, like there is no such thing as an independent agency, and yet there it is.
What does her agency do?
Whatever she wants.
What does it do, though?
Basically, terrorize financial institutions, prevent fintech, prevent new competition, new startups that want to compete with the big banks.
Really?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
How so?
Just by terrorizing anybody who tries to do anything new in financial services.
So Marc Andreessen would have you believe that the CFPB is just Elizabeth Warren's personal agency that she can go ahead and do whatever she wants with. But Marc Andreessen is just full of shit. The CFPB is probably one of the better agencies that our government has created to protect Americans. The CFPB makes sure that people aren't being discriminated against with their banking, making sure that big institutions aren't taking advantage and exploiting the little guy. But Marc Andreessen, he's a tech billionaire, and he wants you to believe that this is just a rogue agency coming after him and all of his friends. And we'll get into why that is a little bit later, but I find it particularly disgusting that billionaires like Andreessen are trying to sway support away from the CFPB when it's actually one of the agencies that is doing good work. And to say that it's not established in the Constitution, so therefore it must not exist, this was an agency created by Congress. The Supreme Court has upheld the idea of independent agencies time and time again. They just upheld the way that the CFPB itself was funded, said that that was all legit. So Marc Andreessen is just lying to you. He's lying directly to Joe Rogan's face. And because Joe Rogan has never met a conspiracy that he didn't like, he's just, whoa, really, guys? So let's go ahead and take a look at what the CFPB actually does, and we'll go from there.
Let's go. CFPB was born out of the 2008 financial crisis. It's the brainchild of then future Senator Elizabeth Warren. In 2010, Congress and then President Barack Obama signed the Dodd-Frank Act, which created the Bureau. It consolidated Consumer Financial Protection Authority from 7 different agencies under one roof. The Bureau has had some blockbuster wins. In 2022, it ordered Wells Fargo to pay $3.7 billion overcharging illegal fees and interest on auto and mortgage loans, wrongfully repossessing customers' cars, and more. This year, it banned Navient from federal student loan servicing and ordered the company to pay $100 million to borrowers who were wrongly steered into forbearance or had payments miscounted. In total, CFPB enforcement over the years has led to nearly $20 billion in consumer relief and $5 billion in fines.
So if we had to sum it all up, the CFPB is basically the police of the financial industry. These are the guys making sure that big institutions are not being predatory against their customers, making sure that the little guy isn't getting ripped off in a way that they just don't understand. And they are actually putting money back into Americans' pockets. Just like they did when Bank of America got caught opening up fake accounts in other people's names. It was the CFPB that held them accountable and returned actual dollars to Americans.
The second biggest bank in America has been caught, in some cases, kind of ripping off customers. Bank of America will be paying out $250 million for reportedly years of bad banking behavior. It includes things like charging bogus fees and even creating fake accounts. The payout will be a $150 million fine, plus some $100 million more paid back to customers. Spokesperson for Bank of America told CNBC that it, quote, voluntarily reduced overdraft fees and eliminated all non-sufficient fund fees in the first half of 2022, whatever that means.
And Bank of America isn't the only institution that have been caught making sure that transactions were reordered so they can charge as many overdraft fees as possible. They aren't the only institution that were caught opening up accounts in other people's names so managers can hit bonuses. But it was the CFPB that caught on to this behavior and stopped them in their tracks. And they made these companies pay this money back to these consumers. But Marc Andreessen wants you to believe that they are just a rogue agency that are, going after people, terrorizing Americans because they have different political beliefs. Now, does that even pass the smell test? I mean, it doesn't even make sense on its face. So why is Joe Rogan not even providing any pushback at all? He's asking questions, but apparently they're going nowhere, and Marc Andreessen is just steamrolling right over the top of him with lie after lie after lie. Here he is again trying to say that it is actually the CFPB that is trying to debank people.
Debanking. This is where a lot of the debanking comes from, is these agencies. So debanking is when you as either a person or your company are literally kicked out of the banking system.
Like they did to Kanye.
Exactly, like they did to Kanye. My partner Ben's father has been debanked.
Really?
We had an employee who
for what?
For having the wrong politics.
Kanye West, or Ye, was not debanked because of the CFPB. He was debanked because he was literally talking shit about Chase Bank publicly. And Chase Bank was like, I don't want to do business with you. It was basically like a gas station saying, hey, you need to go put a shirt on before I serve you. It's basically the same thing. It had nothing to do with the CFPB debanking Kanye. And he provides these other one-off scenarios, and I don't even take them at face value because every other thing he has said here has been a lie. It is actually the CFPB that works to prevent this illegal debanking. It is the CFPB who recently worked with Christians who were debanked from different institutions to make sure that those institutions were not just discriminating against people that they didn't like or they had a disagreement with. It was the CFPB that went after these debanking practices. So Marc Andreessen is just full of shit. Here it says, the CFPB finalizes a new rule on federal oversight of popular digital payment apps to protect personal data, reduce fraud, and stop illegal debanking. They literally just passed new rules for these new payment apps like Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, all of these things to make sure that these companies weren't kicking people off on a whim. So I just do not know what Marc Andreessen is talking about. And to further expand on that particular new rule, let's go ahead and take a look at this.
Starting soon, the CFPB will supervise digital payment companies that handle more than 50 million transactions a year. Now, these platforms process a staggering 13 billion transactions annually in the U.S. alone. The new rule focuses on three big areas: privacy, fraud, disputes, and debanking. The CFPB director says digital payments have gone from a novelty to a necessity, And the rule will give the agency the power to proactively inspect these companies, not just respond to consumer complaints. And this new rule ensures that the companies follow privacy laws and limit data collection. It also strengthens your rights when you need to dispute a fraudulent transaction, and it prevents companies from closing your account without warning.
Protects you from closing your account without warning. Kind of sounds like debanking, right? And it was the CFPB that put this rule into place to protect American consumers, to make sure that these big institutions weren't pulling a fast one on the little guy, to make sure there was no systematic abuse or exploitation of Americans. It is the CFPB that is the cop on the beat to make sure these institutions are not taking advantage of Americans. That is why it is so gross for Andreessen to just be lying to Rogan's face, coming up with this distorted understanding of what the CFPB actually is. And then he uses this conspiracy mongering, or whatever you want to call it, to then go on and say, well, hey, I had to vote for Trump, because the CFPB, the CFPB is real bad.
30.
This is one of the reasons why we ended up supporting Trump. It's like we can't live in this world. We can't live in a world where somebody starts a company that's a completely legal thing and then they literally get sanctioned, right, and embargoed by the United States government through a completely unaccountable, no due process. None of this is written down. There's no rules. There's no court. There's no decision process. There's no appeal. Who do you appeal to, right? Like, who do you go to get your bank account back?
I don't know the exact process by which you can challenge a CFPB ruling. I don't know the exact process of how you could file an appeal with the CFPB. But Marc Andreessen should, because his company, a company that he funded, was actually defrauding customers, and it was the CFPB that actually shut them down. So I wonder if Marc Andreessen just has a bone to grind with the CFPB. I wonder if Marc Andreessen is just a snobby billionaire that doesn't want any regulations applying to his industry because of things like this. Look at the CFPB to distribute nearly $40 million to consumers misled by fintech company LendUp Loans. If we scroll down, we can better understand that after multiple enforcement actions against LendUp over the years, LendUp was ordered to stop making new loans. In 2016, the CFPB ordered LendUp to stop misrepresenting the benefits of borrowing from the company, and in 2020, the CFPB sued LendUp for allegedly violating the Military Lending Act. So the CFPB tried to work with LendUp, tried to get them on the right track, tried to make sure that they weren't defrauding customers. And apparently this company just couldn't get in line. And this, all started back in 2016 when Donald Trump himself was actually president. And he was actually part of another company. I think he funded this one as well because Andreessen, for those of you that don't know, I believe is an angel investor. He invests in tech startups, crypto startups, things of that nature. And there was just a major collapse of a company called Synapse that really left many Americans really screwed over. This is pretty wild. I have no money. Thousands of Americans see their savings vanish in Synapse fintech crisis. Thousands of Americans will receive little or nothing from savings accounts that were locked during the collapse of fintech middleman Synapse. Customers believed the accounts were backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, but they weren't. CNBC spoke to dozens of customers caught in the predicament, people who have lost sums ranging from $7,000 to well over $200,000. I read a story about this one lady who sold her house and used this Synapse banking company, fintech company, to put that money into a savings account. And then her account was shuttered, locked down. And it is unlikely that she is going to get the majority of that money returned to her. So when Marc Andreessen goes on to Joe Rogan and lies directly to his face about what the CFPB is, what it actually does, and how it is protecting consumers, I would venture to say it's because he doesn't want these types of companies that he has been involved with to have any regulations at all. These people are literally trying to rig the government in their favor while screwing everybody else over. And I find that absolutely despicable. These wealthy billionaires are going to have way more sway over the government in a second Trump administration. You have people like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy running a made-up agency called Doge, and it's people like Andreessen and others that are going to be making recommendations for like closing the CFPB because they don't want any cops regulating their bad behavior. This is absolutely disgusting. We are basically witnessing an oligarchy come to form right before our very eyes. And it is disgusting people like Marc Andreessen who are trying to rig the system in their favor. So, I don't even know what to say. This is what we can expect from a second Trump term. Donald Trump doesn't care about any of this stuff. Donald Trump is looking to get rich by using the office of the presidency. Donald Trump is looking to go after his perceived enemies with the office of the presidency. And it's all of these wealthy billionaire assholes that are surrounding themselves with people like Elon and Vivek and all these other people. They're really just trying to pull a fast one on the American people. And we should call it out every step of the way. And I don't even know. It's disgusting, and it's disappointing. It's really disappointing to watch our government fall to assholes like this. So I will leave it there for now. If you guys got anything out of this video, please remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share it with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. I am trying to make it to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and I have like less than 200 to go. So I would very much appreciate your support. If you want to see some of the economic impacts that could come from Donald Trump's mass deportation plan, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.